Yeah, I see Dwight trying to
Okay.
raise his hand.
We're on. Go. You're ready.
All right.
Good to see you guys.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris, how you
Hey,
doing?
Chris.
Good to see you.
Stranger in the building. Watch out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who is that guy?
Who is that guy?
Wow. Good to see you.
Well, I had a day off, and it just happened to work for Friday, and my eyes opened and said, "Hey, listen, you got something going on this morning." And I was like, "I know exactly what it is."
That's a
So,
God thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
man, all you guys look 10 years younger.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
you know what to say.
Yeah, yeah. So
We've been working out.
Okay.
so what are some snap judgments we tend to make about others based on their appearance or social status?
I think we've been talking about that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, how do most people characterize or describe success or great leadership?
Results.
Yeah, I think it comes off of winning. And
Mhm.
I guess that would follow after watching a basketball game. How do you think God would describe success or great leadership?
sacrifice and service.
Yeah.
trusting in Him.
Mhm.
All right. What work of art, song, picture, book, movie, etc., is sure to put you in a better mood when you're feeling low?
Hoosiers.
All the movie Hoosiers?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think Starry Night, Van Gogh's Starry Night.
Oh.
Mhm.
Okay. Rick, this is your part.
All right, here we go, guys. The previous chapter represents the final and official rejection of Saul as Israel's anointed king. He has failed as the Lord's first designated king because he rejected the Lord's authority structure for Israel's unique kingship. It is an exciting moment in the biblical drama when David first steps on stage as a means of introducing us to David. 1 Samuel 16 has two units. First unit narrated his anointing by the great prophet Samuel. Second unit explains how subsequent events lead to David's introduction to the royal court of Saul. In verses 1 through 13, Yahweh intervened directly and commissioned Samuel to anoint David. Second half narrates events that show God's provincial but less intrusive involvement. With the assertion that the Spirit of Yahweh rushes upon David with power, the narrator proceeds to explain that an opposite effect has occurred in Saul's case. The Spirit of the Lord has departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord tormented him. In so doing, the historian also explains how young David came to be anointed to an important position in Saul's court and begins to show spirit and empowerment in a way unlike Saul.
All right, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting as you look at David coming into position before he was anointed, but it was 20 years before he actually became king. And he was in Saul's court. He was played the lyre, the harp, and then became a warrior. And then he was also Saul's armor guy. And then he also became Saul's son-in-law. So, okay, since Steve's in Rhode Island, I guess. Read this. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long are you going to mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem, because I have selected a king from his sons." "How can I go? Saul will hear about it and kill me." The Lord answered, "Take a young cow with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Then invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will let you know what you are to do. You are to anoint for me the one I indicate to you." Samuel did what the Lord directed and went to Bethlehem. When the elders of the town met him, they trembled and asked, "Do you come in peace?" "In peace," he replied. "I've come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." Then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and said, "Certainly the Lord's anointed one is here before him." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Don't look at his appearance or his stature, because I have rejected him. Man does not see what the Lord sees. For man sees what is visible, but the Lord sees the heart." Jesse called Abinab and presented him to Samuel. "The Lord hasn't chosen this one either," Samuel said. Then Jesse presented Shemaiah, but Samuel said, "The Lord hasn't chosen this one either." After Jesse presented 7 of his sons to him, Samuel told Jesse, "The Lord hasn't chosen any of these." And Samuel asked him, "Are these all the sons you have?" "They're still the youngest," he answered, "but right now he's tending the sheep," Samuel told Jesse. "Send for him. We won't sit down to eat until he gets here." So Jesse sent for him. He had beautiful eyes and a healthy, handsome appearance. Then the Lord said, "Anoint him, for he is the one." So Samuel took the horn of oil, anointed him in the presence of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord took control of David from that day forward. Then Samuel set out and went to Ramah. Now the Spirit of the Lord left Saul, and an evil spirit sent from the Lord. So Saul's servants said to him, "You see that an evil spirit from God is tormenting you. Let our Lord command your servants here in your presence to look for someone who knows how to play the lyre. Whenever the evil spirit from God troubles you, that person can play the lyre, and you will feel better." Then Samuel commanded his servants, "Find me someone who plays well and bring him to me." One of the young men answered, I've seen a son of Jesse of Bethlehem who knows how to play the lyre. He is also a valiant man, a warrior, eloquent, handsome, and the Lord is with him." Then Saul dispatched messengers to Jesse and said, "Send me your son David, who is with the sheep." So Jesse took a donkey loaded with bread, a skin of wine, and one of the young goats, and sent them by his son David to Saul. When David came to Saul and entered his servant, Saul admired him greatly, and David became his armor bearer. Then Saul sent word to Jesse, "Let David remain in my service, for I am pleased with him." Whenever the spirit from God troubled Saul, David would pick up his lyre and play, and Saul would then be relieved, feel better, and the evil spirit would leave him. So, any initial thoughts on the passage?
Pretty standard selection process for a leader.
Yeah. So, few interesting things in this as we go through it. What is significant that God does not ask all that God does? Oh, what? I guess I didn't need that not there. What is significant that God does not ask Samuel, "Why do you mourn for Saul?" instead of, but "How long are you going to mourn for Saul?" Oh, I guess that was right. Why do you mourn for Saul instead of "How long will you mourn for Saul?" What does this say about Samuel and his feelings for Saul?
He loved him.
Yeah. And it was just disappointed. He saw so much future in him. And remember, Saul initially was so he was a foot taller than anybody else. He was a handsome young man, but he was very humble to start out. I mean, he wouldn't come forward to be anointed in front of people. He just hid in the crowd, but it's hard to hide in the crowd when you're a foot taller than everybody else. But then he just kind of, as he got into power, he got corrupted. So absolute power corrupts absolutely, as they say.
Happens to a lot of them.
Yeah. And so he's just Saul's just disappointed and that happened. And like he said, you loved him, but he was just. And so this question 2, in verse 4, you're going to have to think about last week. Why do you think the elders of Bethlehem were scared in verse 4? So Samuel did what the Lord directed and went to Bethlehem. But when the elders of the town met him, they trembled and asked, "Do you come in peace?" So I guess there could be a couple different answers to that. But why do you think they were concerned about that? Think back to last week. Anybody here from last week?
I was not.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Okay.
I was, and it didn't help me. So
Well, you remember when Samuel had given Saul the word to go out and
get the yeah.
kill the
Sacrifice.
Amalekites and kill everybody, man, woman, and child, babies, sheep and goats and cows, whatever. And he came in and Saul had done what he thought was right and what God said, and he erected himself a monument. And we talked, that's right in Carmel. It's what they said in the Bible. It says in the Bible, he erected that in Carmel. But then when Samuel comes and Saul's telling him what a great job he did, then Samuel goes, "Well, what's those sheep and those goats I hear mooing?" And no, sheep don't move, but baaing or whatever they were. And then he also kept the leader of the Amalekites. And so that was a kind of a big screw up on Saul's part, blaming the people. Well, the people made me do it. The people that made me do this. But then Samuel took a sword and hacked this king to death. I mean, that says just chopped him up. And so part of that, I think they were probably a little bit afraid that, well, who is he going to, is he coming here to chop somebody else up? Did somebody else fail to do what God said? Or so that's why they were, I'm thinking that's why they might have been,
Well, I think too that it would have been pretty clear that you had the ear of God, and you know, you always suspect the worst for yourself, right? When a situation like that, and so they know that God directs him. What are you doing here, right? What's going
yeah.
on?
Did you find out that secret sin I did? I didn't think
Yeah,
anybody knew about that. What does it say about Jesse's estimation of David that he is not brought in from the fields for this momentous occasion? So Samuel tells him to bring all of his sons. And note that Jesse seems a bit dismissive of Samuel's inquiry as to whether he has another son.
it almost sounds like an inverse of Joseph.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that too. I think where was I reading? One commentary, or maybe been one of the pastors I listened to about this passage, that thought David might have been the child of when Jesse had an affair, and so they kind of went off on that. So they really didn't include him with the rest of the family. And that's why Jesse kind of didn't mention that he had a bastard son. I'm not sure whether that's the case or not. And then there's also another guy was talking very similar, but he didn't mention that David might be a result of an affair, but he did mention in reading and some of the Hebrew words on about his eyes and his hair might have been more auburn rather than probably black hair, which most Jews at the time had, and his eyes might have been blue instead of brown. Which
Did the commentary assume that he might be in an affair because he looked different than his brothers? Because that's the one thing in the Bible that it doesn't mention, that he was a strikingly different looking person.
yeah, so I mean that's the assumption that they made. So
Yeah, yeah.
I I didn't see it. Several people made that assumption, but not every, it doesn't say that explicitly anywhere. So, although, well, I'll have to think about that again. Because I thought, oh no,
It's just weird when you make those assumptions, as these commentators make assumptions sometimes, and I'm going, man, I'm not reading that anywhere. And the only place I see it is where they do describe him as strikingly different than the
Yeah.
rest of his brothers. Yeah.
So yeah, and so that's why I couched it as assumption. It's not biblically, it doesn't say it anywhere explicitly. But again, and also it is kind of the opposite of Joseph,
Yeah.
that story. So, but that's why he's such an unlikely selection for this position. What was God communicating by passing over all Jesse's sons before picking David?
I'll pick the guy. That's what he was communicating.
Yeah, or as in verse 7, man does not see what the Lord sees, for a man,
Mhm.
but the Lord sees the heart. And you remember, he was looking for a man after his own heart. So why did
It's pretty
Samuel?
miraculous too that when you've got a group of people standing in front of you and that somebody, and then God recognizes the one he's looking for is not there.
Yeah,
You kind of look around and go, wow, how did they know that?
yeah, yeah, because they weren't even going to bring David up. Jesse.
Right. I mean, that's would have been what if I had been in that first group, you'd say, wow, this prophet really does have direct line to God, because how would he know that he's not here?
Yeah. So why do you suppose Samuel anointed David in the presence of his brothers?
To make sure they understood what the position that David was getting. I also wonder if David was physically changed when the Spirit of the Lord comes upon him. In other words, you could see it in him, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. I mean, so he's still probably up through these initial things. I mean, most of them say he's probably was somewhere between 10 and 15, and certainly when he meets Goliath, which is in the next chapter, he wasn't much more than a teenager if he was a teenager. So at that point,
So
and
he
again,
was probably gangly and wore braces.
yeah,
Well, and that the comparison to Joseph, you remember Joseph's presentation to his brothers about his leadership was this is my self-discovery. You guys need to listen to this. That didn't go over real well
no, no.
since they threw him in a hole.
Yeah, I saw this vision where you were all going to bow down to me. That's not.
Bow like reeds. Yeah.
So, as one of David's brothers, how would you have felt being passed over in favor of David? I don't think he'd be pleased about it, but
Depends on what you wanted, right?
yeah.
You may have been happy to go back into the fields in Bethlehem. I don't know.
How was the Holy Spirit at work in David's life and in Saul's life? I guess I should have made sure we read verse 13 again. So Samuel took the horn of oil, anointed him in the presence of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord took control of David from that day forward. Then Samuel set out and went to Ramah. So here it says, now the Spirit of the Lord had left Saul. So I guess it's just, pretty self-explanatory what's going on here. But this next part is interesting, and there was several debates. So let's see what you feel about this. So, an evil spirit sent from the Lord began to torment him. So Saul's servant said to him, "You see that an evil spirit from God is tormenting you." So, how does that set with you? Because God doesn't do anything evil.
It is inconsistent.
Yes. How can evil spirit torment soul be God when God is holy and loving? So what does that possibly mean?
Yeah, but God has made us with free will, and it's in man's nature to sin. So I would suspect that if any of us had that happen to you, if within nature sin would be you go against God, and what was tormenting him was actually Satan. I just think it's pretty natural, actually.
Well, the devil loves a vacuum, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So it is hard to fathom, though. This is like when the woman comes to the table and he makes the comment about the dogs, and then she comes back with her comment about the dogs.
Yeah.
It's very out of character, and I always thought that he was saying that not for the woman, but for the disciples who were treating her badly, so they would hear what their words sounded like.
Yeah.
Because it's completely out of out of context of everything he'd done to that point and everything he did afterwards. And so, I just sometimes it's for others to see, but in this case, I think when God left him, there was a vacuum and evil came in. And
Yeah.
I'd love to know what the original Hebrew, how this was written, because I think sometimes these translations miss. That's like God took control of David. Okay, well, for how long did he take control? Because he sure
Yeah.
didn't treat,
Yeah.
Bathsheba's husband very well. Was God in control then? There's a lot of questions there, but
Yeah. I think, well, it's not that, I think maybe we talked about this before. It's not that, well, it says David was a man after God's own heart, and it wasn't that he lived a perfect life, but I think what is he always returned to God and
yes,
repented. So,
yep,
which,
gives
yeah,
us
yeah. So, and one of the commentaries, and I thought this might be interesting, is not that it was God that sent an evil spirit, but it could be because Saul had screwed up. That it was maybe an angel that came to exact some judgment on Saul for what he'd done. So I don't know. They several others struggle with that too. I guess I think Susan's got a better whatever that is with the Jewish or Hebrew thing. So I'll have to ask her about that. How evil spirit, what the words used there are. So if you were Saul's attendant, what would you have suggested he do? Turn on a Christian radio station. I guess the lyre was the closest thing they had to it, or someone singing songs.
music. What is it? Music salves the tormented soul. What is that saying? Music calms the tormented soul.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's I'm sure that saying comes from
Yeah.
this story.
What kind of gives you peace or quiets a racing mind? Is it music or
Yeah, I've said this many times. When I get wound up on myself, I just stop and pray for God's peace. And I literally feel like a wash over me. It's an amazing thing. Still happens at my old age, and it's truly amazing.
yeah, I agree with that. And so sometimes it's hard for me to get to that point.
Yeah.
And and I think I shared before when I was talking about Marlon, that's that has that the brain cancer, and he has trouble going to sleep at night because that's when things slow down, or when he just can't. His mind's racing and everything else. I tried to uh, pray for him, but on that specifically, that he have peace at night, and then also told him to get online and listen to the Sons of Korah as they sing some of the Psalms. To me, that's kind of comforting too. Um, but okay. Any comment on these? How is the truth that God looks on the heart, both bad news and good news for us?
Because we're men.
Yeah. 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 It depends on when he's looking at our hearts, right?
Yep.
I think there's a message here when, again, when you were asking the question about Saul, Saul is a man, and his ego was stronger than him relying on God. He relied on himself more than God. So he was looking more at the top of his head with the crown than he was looking to God. And we as human beings sometimes, when we should do what Greg is talking about, we should pray. Instead of praying, we push God to the side and say, "Well, I can handle this. I can do this. That's me. It's me. It's me." Well, it isn't you. It is God, and you got to pray.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, you think of the story of, Jesus, bring the little children, and then you got to have faith like a child. It makes me wonder if David was under 13, because then it aligns with what Jesus was saying about how you approach God, and how it's easier for a young child without that pride and without that do it myself type attitude. It's easier to drop that.
Also, well, the younger kids, I mean, they're really proud of the grandkids when they do it themselves, though. And I did it. I did it. So, so if any comments on these as we run through these, some things to think about from the passage, a couple different commentators are people are impressed with the external image and appearance. God is concerned with the internal. The heart is what matters most. God is working in the waiting. Be still before the Lord and wait expectantly for him. Lord, the only thing I can do is wait and put my hope in you. I wait for your help, my God. And then Psalm 40 says, I waited patiently for the Lord to help me, and he turned to me and heard my cry. So this is the hardest part for us right now, is working in the waiting. Are you really God? Are you anyway?
Well, and how many of those were David's words?
I think the guy, well, Gary Hammock quoted these, I think, Psalms of David. So
Yeah. Makes sense.
so disobedient to God invites distress for us. Maybe not an evil spirit, but yeah, disobedience. Worship soothes the soul. So
When you talk about disobedience, so we're talking about mistrust. If you mistrust God and you think you're going to fix it on your own, or why is God doing this to me, or any of those kinds of things, they're disobedience to God. You have to trust in God wholeheartedly in good times and bad times. And when you don't, it's distressful. It's, you're trying to figure it out on your own, and it belongs to God.
It's funny. I had a dinner last night with an old small group of ours, and I know one of the guys. He has 9 kids, and and he worked his way into a pretty successful career, and but he never went to college, and so now he's had to change jobs. And when you go through the interview process, even when you're older and you don't have that degree, he's had some difficulties. And he's got a job now because he's got 9 kids. He has to have a job, right? And um, he called me like 3 or 4 weeks ago and said, "Man, I hate my job. This is just awful. My boss is terrible. This work is so mundane." And he had heard, and I knew that he had prayed to God, and God, he said, "God told me wait, wait." But he heard about this job and he went to go after it, because he said it was more specific. He said, "God said, wait, and I will bring you a job." And he said he knew this wasn't it. The way it came, the way he heard about it, he had to go after it. And he'd interviewed like 4 times because these are pretty high level positions. And he kept asking these for confirmation. He says, "I don't have a degree. Is that going to be a problem?" "Oh, no, 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 no. We want you to come in." And of course, he didn't get it, and he was just distraught. And I saw him last night. I said, "How you doing?" He goes, "I'm trying to listen to God. I'm trying to wait because I know that's what he's told me to do. And he'll bring me something. I know he will." And it was, as you read through this, I'm going, this is exactly, what was going on here. This is just a really neat story. And for him to recognize that. And he said, "I am trying to find peace in the job that I'm doing." And I realized that it's a gift too, even though I complain about it and my boss is kind of an idiot. But yeah, it was really something to hear him, say that I've got to wait because I was told to wait. you know.
Yeah, I may need to talk to him, Greg. We're going through the same thing. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. All right. Thought one. Sorrowful experiences do arise in the lives of us all, but they are not to grip us. We are to conquer and overcome such experiences. No matter what confronts us, we are to be triumphant over the circumstance. God will help us conquer and overcome any tragedy or sorrowful experience. The Lord will empower us to live victorious lives, conquering all the sorrowful tragedies that strike us. We are not to wallow around in grief and despair, displaying a sad countenance. We are to live victoriously, for we are more than conquerors through Christ, who has loved and given himself for us. For every child of God defeats this evil world, and we achieve this victory through our faith. And who can win this battle against the world? Only those who believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Thought two, the greatest gift in all the world is the gift of God's Spirit. When we approach God through Christ, God places his own Spirit in us, in the very core of our being. We become indwelt by God's Spirit. It is God's Spirit who convicts and saves us and gives us assurance of salvation. He guides, teaches, protects, and provides the necessities of life for us, meeting all our needs. And thought three, the sovereignty of God. God moved events in order to place David in the court of Saul. God worked all things out, moving the events so that the preparation of the future king could begin. By being in the court of Saul, David would learn how a king should rule a nation. He would learn exactly what a king should and should not do. He would be exposed to the nation's economic, military, and justice systems, and to the morality and character of its officials. God moved events so that David could learn how to fulfill his task upon the earth. And again, as I said, it was probably 20 years from him being anointed before he actually began to rule. The lesson for us is clear. God is sovereign. He rules and reigns over earth. He and he alone is God Almighty, the Lord of hosts, who stands over every creature of this universe, both in heaven and in earth. So, any other comments on this?
I was just thinking, how great God is, because here it is, he puts David, a young man, so to Saul, an unthreatening man, young boy, really, and also a boy who would be there in Saul's, worst moments, because he's supposed to be there to soothe his soul and sing to him. So he would be there in the worst of times. He would see what's going on. Where if he were an older man, Saul would have been threatened by him, and he wouldn't invite him to these times to see what was really going on and to see his struggle of thought to what to do next. But because of who David was, and because he was handsome, right? That that's a, let those people come close to you. He gets access to that, and God put that all in place. I mean, that's just amazing.
Yeah. Any other comments before we move? All right. All right, Gary, you want to stop the recording?
I will do so.
All right.
If I ever get a cursor here, there we go.
All right.